Welcome to Fireside Giants. My name is Alex and my co-host here, Anthony Rivardo. I hope you enjoyed our draft coverage over the past couple of days, live streaming and getting the highlight videos out and the articles out. Hope you guys enjoyed all that good content and really are enjoying these draft selections. We want to talk about them, go through each individual pick, what we think about them, what they're going to bring to the Giants, and maybe giving them a grade. We'll see how we're feeling. Because I know giving them premature grades is kind of irrelevant. Doesn't really make sense at this point. We just want to give you some evaluation on what they actually are bringing physically and tangibly. Some background information, and then, did we expect this in the value that the Giants did get in this draft class? I think they walked away with one of the best drafts out of any team this year because they really set themselves up well, and I'm going to talk about that in a couple minutes, Anthony. Before we jump into it, how you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing great, man. I think that the NFL draft went really well for the New York Giants. I think that they crushed it, and I'm happy to get into that and discuss that. And I'm really happy that the live streams and everything else went really well and that we were able to enjoy this draft experience with the many great viewers that we have. So thank you all to everyone who tuned in, and shout out to anyone who won some giveaways, and thank you to everyone who donated. It was a lot of fun. It was a fun weekend. The live streams were great. You guys got to watch us react to every pick live. We had some pretty good reactions, especially with the first two picks. And yeah, man, I'm really happy with the way the draft season went. It was a long process finally leading up to the draft. It all came and went in 3 days, short days, and that's it. Now it's over, but now we get to recap it, discuss it, break it down, and look ahead to the season, which I cannot wait for. This is going to be a big year for the Giants, and it's all going to be, built on this awesome NFL draft that we just had, and I can't wait to discuss it. And you know what? Let's dive in.
Absolutely, yeah. And I want to talk about right off the bat the trade back and what that means for the Giants and kind of where this draft capital can be allocated next season. Even if it was by accident, because I think they did want Devonta Smith, they ended up being leapfrogged by the Eagles. But for the most part, when you're thinking about what they got back from traded back from Chicago, they might have accidentally walked into the best case scenario for them. And the reason is they got a 4th-round pick next year, a 1st-round pick, and a 5th-round pick this year. But when you're talking about that 1st-round pick next year, that's the big one. That's the one. They have a really tough schedule. They could end up being, a bottom 15, bottom 10 team where the Giants will get a top 15, top 10 draft selection, which will be incredibly valuable next year because there's a couple really good quarterbacks. And why is that important? The jury's still out on Daniel Jones. That's the big thing for the Giants. If he doesn't take that step forward this upcoming season, the Giants are going to have to start looking for another quarterback, whether they like it or not. Having that quarterback on a rookie deal is super, super important, and they can continue to rebuild and spend their money wisely if they have another quarterback on a rookie contract. And kind of not restarting the process, but if there's a guy who they think can come in and make an impact immediately and, doesn't need that much refinement, where DJ needed a couple years and they had a lot of turnover in coaching. I think now the Giants have an established coaching staff. They have some continuity, and you bring a new quarterback into that type of system and that type of culture, he would thrive. Daniel Jones came in with Pat Shurmur. They turned that whole thing around in one season. He's kind of been, tossed through the ringer a little bit. So that's, my perspective on that. The Giants might have walked into a great scenario. If Daniel Jones does struggle, and he doesn't show that he takes a big developmental leap, they can use that draft capital to find another quarterback. But best case scenario, which is the one that we're all hoping for, DJ ends up becoming an absolute beast this year, has a Josh Allen-like developmental leap, and you have 2 first-round picks to go out and say, let's go get Kayvon Thibodeau from Oregon, who's going to be an absolute monster as an outside linebacker in the 3-4 scheme. So that's kind of exciting. He's going to be a sick player. He's going to be a top 10 selection, a bunch of really good pass rushers next year. The Giants can still, continue to allocate draft capital towards the offensive line next season. This is kind of how this draft will shape out. They can really plug holes, go best player available, but also plug some holes on both sides of the ball and really boost this team into what hopefully can be a Super Bowl contending squad. That's why I think that draft capital is so important, Anthony. When you look at the draft capital, what we got back, why do you think it's so important? Do you think that that contingency plan that might have walked right into by accident for Daniel Jones is probably the best part about it, in my opinion?
I think there's a lot of factors that go into making those 2022 draft picks so important. Not just the 1st-round pick. The 1st-round pick is incredible, and I'll get into that. But in general, 2022 draft picks are looked at really highly by NFL teams right now because the 2021 draft process was strange. It was wild, and it was confusing, and it was really difficult for NFL teams to evaluate talent and gauge who these players are before they were drafted. There was no scouting combine. The only time we got face-to-face interactions from players and the teams was the Senior Bowl, and that's only with seniors. So that's a really small portion of this draft class, I mean, it's a pretty large portion, but at the same time, there's a lot of juniors out there who didn't get the face-to-face interaction with these teams, and the Giants missed out on that. And a lot of teams felt that way, that it was really hard to evaluate talent this year. You had a lot of guys who opted out. Look at Gregory Russo. He was supposed to be a top 10 pick, went 30th overall, I think, to Buffalo, right? Because he was supposed to be a top 10 pick if he played last year. He didn't. The opt-out really made people question things, and it made it really difficult for all of these teams to evaluate talent. There were so many changes in draft rankings and draft projections because of all of the uncertainty with the 2020 season and everything that the COVID entailed, right? 2022 is a totally different draft class because the 2021 class had to deal with the COVID stuff. 2021 football season is in full go. Okay, the 2021 NFL season is in full go. Everything is in full go, thankfully, because we are now being able to be vaccinated and all of that stuff. You know, life is returning to normalcy, and that means the NFL scouting combine will return to normalcy. The Senior Bowl will be more normal. You'll have more face-to-face interactions at the Senior Bowl, because even still, when they had them this year, it was limited because of COVID and contact tracing, all that stuff, social distancing. This next year, it should be more face-to-face. It should be better evaluating, better scouting, more opportunities to scout as well because of traveling and going in person to different games. Next year's picks are really valuable right now. NFL teams know that. There was a report from, I think, Ian Rappaport earlier the day of the NFL draft. He said next year's picks, don't expect to see many of those traded unless it's a huge deal, right? Because teams are really valuing those because they know that it's a stronger draft class, A. There's loads of talent in that year's class. And then also it's just easier to evaluate next year because it's back to normal. So that was huge for the Giants to set themselves up for next year's draft when you know that they struggled to evaluate this one. They know that they'll be able to evaluate next year's draft properly. So they wanted extra picks for that. Now, in terms of that first round pick, which is super, super valuable for the Giants, and of course that third round pick is too, especially considering they only moved back 8 spots and they got a future third. That was a steal. You could even call that a fleece. Shout out Dave Gettleman. But that first round pick, yeah, Alex, I think you bring up a great point. That really does give the Giants insurance and a contingency plan and a lot of flexibility at the quarterback position. Daniel Jones, this is his year to break out. This is his prove it year. If he does, amazing. We have an extra first round pick to get extra talent and keep building around him and providing him with all of the help he needs on either side of the ball to get this team over the hump, back into the playoffs, and hopefully to the Super Bowl. That's what that first round pick can be. Inversely, if Daniel Jones proves that he isn't the guy in his prove it year and he bottoms out and the Giants are a bad team this year because of the quarterback position, well, now we have extra draft capital. It took San Francisco 3 first-round picks to move up to number 3 overall and draft Trey Lance. The Giants now have 2 first-round picks in next year's draft. They would only have to give up, in theory, 1 extra first-round pick for that, other than the 2 that they already have. Like, we have the capital now to where if we have to go up and get a quarterback, we can do it. We have 2 third-round picks. We have 2 fifth-round picks. Like, we have a lot of draft capital next year, which is super exciting. Even if we stick and pick with all of those and we make no trades, incredible. Look at how many players, how many talented players you can find in next year's class. Just building around Daniel Jones and building this franchise, building this foundation for this team with a young nucleus of talented players. Or, like I said, Daniel Jones bottoms out, you make your move, you go get the new guy. Look at Sam Howell out of North Carolina. That dude's a beast. Spencer Rattler out of Oklahoma, tons of potential. Keaton Slovis out of USC. He's a guy that a lot of people are really high on. I'm a little lukewarm. USC also doesn't have the best track record with first-round quarterbacks recently, but still, Keaton Slovis is a good name. Desmond Ridder out of Cincinnati and Tyler Show out of Texas Tech. People are pretty high on him. JT Daniels out of Georgia. There's a lot of quarterbacks in next year's class. And these are like guys who right now are looked at highly. Give them another year. They might break out and become that bona fide number 1 pick. This year we had like 3 players who could have been bona fide number 1 picks at quarterback. Okay, that was just an unusual draft class. I think we get the same thing next year with this group of quarterbacks. And that's exciting because if the Giants do decide they need to move on from Daniel Jones, well, now they have the first-round pick and draft capital to go get their guy, and they have a draft class that's loaded with quarterback talent that they can absolutely take advantage of if they need to. Really exciting. I love what the Giants did, planning for the future, giving themselves insurance at the most important position in the sport.
Yeah, I love how Joe Judge reacted to everyone being like, oh, like Dave Gettleman never traded back before. He was like, I think Dave has a concussion or something. Like that was his response to Dave trading back in this whole theory, or really not theory, reality, that he's never done it before in 8 draft classes. And the Giants finally modernized their approach. That's the best part about this. We saw them take not only a developmental step roster-wise, but ideology-wise, like philosophy-wise. Their whole organization, the front office, the executives, the ownership, they took a huge modernized step forward. which is exactly what we needed. The Giants were no longer going to be a ground and pound run the football team with a shutdown defense, and they do have a shutdown defense, which is obviously a necessity, but the ground and pound aspect, this is a passing league now. And even Gettleman is admitting it now. I mean, Joe Judge, Nick Saban disciple, he was even saying this is a passing league now. We have to get elite receivers. And Kadarius Toney, that leads us up to him. Our 20th overall pick, Kadarius Toney out of Florida. The guy, some say he's the human joystick. And what I'll say about Kadarius Toney is that he is actually, I wrote about him. Anthony pulled up this article. I even totally forgot I wrote about him back in January. And I was like, this is a guy the Giants might be able to land early in the first round if the other guys are off the board. And they ended up getting him in the middle of the first round. The kid's special. If you watch him play, he doesn't go down on first contact. He has pretty solid hands. He has like 3 drops in 2 years. He is a good route runner in short to intermediate ranges, and he is shifty as hell, and he can offer value on special teams as a kick returner too, which I think is where he'll have some additional value for the Giants day one. The guy's also just a good guy. You can tell he has a good character. There was some red flags that came up. There was he had a loaded rifle off campus. He had a loaded BB gun or like airsoft gun on campus. And this was when he was like 18 years old. So, this is nothing compared to the Micah Parsons allegations. This is like, he was in Florida where this stuff is actually legal anyway. You can have a loaded rifle in Florida. So he didn't get in trouble for it.
He didn't break any laws. He wasn't arrested or anything because him having that gun in the backseat was legal. So, I don't know. No red flags to me. I think he's a good guy, and I like his music.
Yeah, that's another thing. He actually is a pretty solid musician. And I'll tell you what, Kadarius Toney is being underrated by a lot of fans, even our own fans. And if you heard what Urban Meyer said from Jacksonville, their head coach, his comment was very telling. He said, it was heartbreaking to see Kadarius Toney go before pick 25. I was dying to get him. Urban Meyer, he's a big college coach, coming up to the NFL. So he has a lot of expertise. He has a lot of information here. This guy, Kadarius Toney, is capable of being an elite level playmaker for us. Even if it's from the slot or Z, the people are saying he can go outside and play the X if you needed him to. But the Giants are going to use a lot of multiple formations, especially with bunch receivers and stuff like that. And they're going to get very creative with the pre-snap motion. He can be that gadget player. We've been trying to force feed kind of gadget plays to Sterling Shepard, and sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. Sterling Shepard's not the type of guy who will make a guy miss on first contact, but you get Kadarius Toney the ball. He used to be a running back and a quarterback. The guy can throw it apparently 70 yards. He's a gadget player. He's like the exact definition of a gadget player. He can do so many different things for your offense, and that's what excites me about him. He's just so versatile, so diverse in the way he actually can play. And I think at 20, you get a player who can bring another element to your offense. That every great offense these days has that wow factor. You know what I mean? They have that wow factor. Tyreek Hill, Lamar Jackson, Aaron Rodgers. You could even, Julio Jones, whoever, Kyler Murray, with the ability to scramble. It's the wow factor that really gives you that edge at times. And I think Kadarius Toney has that wow factor. I think Kenny Golladay does, but he's a little bit more of a 50-50 catcher. He's not going to blow your mind with any crazy jukes and stuff like that. But Toney, man, he's being underrated. I really like him as a player. I really like him as an athlete, as a superior athlete. And he's going to grow really nicely. I think he's going to maybe do 500 to 700 yards, 4 or 5 touchdowns next year for us.
Yeah, I love the Kadarius Toney pick. I think, anyone who calls that a reach, here's what a reach is. A reach is when you draft a player at a certain draft spot who was not valued at that draft spot, and you didn't gain all the value that you could have at that draft spot. So say the Giants stuck at number 11 and they drafted Kadarius Toney. That's absolutely a reach. But they traded down and got a first-round pick, a third-round pick, and a fifth-round pick out of it. They didn't reach. They got a lot of draft capital. They got as much value as possible from that pick, plus Kadarius Toney on top of it. That's not a reach, dude. A reach is when you take Alex Leatherwood at 17 when he's supposed to go to the second round. You should trade down and get the value that you can for that pick, then draft Alex Leatherwood if that's your guy. That's the difference. The Giants didn't reach. Plus, he was supposed to go at 25 anyway. Urban Meyer literally said it. I think it's a great selection. I love Kadarius Toney. I think physically his build and his athleticism compares well to Odell Beckham Jr. His playing style is maybe not the same, but he's got a lot of similar traits that Odell had coming out of college. And with Kadarius Toney, man, he fills a very niche need for the Giants. The Giants were dead last in the NFL in yards after the catch per reception. Kadarius Toney was the best guy in this draft class for yards after catch on any reception, any given down. He can take the ball to the house from any point of the field. The Giants filled a very niche need, but a very critical need. Okay, like that's a very, that's not like, oh, we just needed a receiver. That's like we needed a receiver who can do this specifically. And I got the best guy who could do that. And it's a critical thing to do. He's going to contribute as a punt returner, kick returner, and just as an amazing gadget player and good receiver. He's got good routes, dude. He's a good route runner. He's kind of freestyle the way he goes out there. Looks like a basketball player doing dribble moves. But, dude, he has a sick crossover, and he is a really quick guy. It's hard to bring him down, and he's got pretty good hands, too. Only 3 drops on 150 targets. Kadarius Toney is a really talented player, and he provides a whole new element to the Giants' offense, a whole lot of speed that the Giants didn't have. I can't wait to see him work for us. I think he's going to be a phenomenal player, and I love the selection by Dave Gettleman and the Giants.
I think so, too. And, it wasn't just Kadarius Toney. It's also the first round and fourth round pick. So, a lot of value moving back to 20. You get an elite playmaker or potentially elite, plus the draft capital. And, the interesting thing you said before, and Dan Duggan just tweeted something really interesting, comparing OBJ and Kadarius Toney's athletic measurements. And I'll tell you, Toney actually is a superior athlete compared to OBJ, and I'll tell you right now. On the 40-yard dash, Toney had a 4.37, Beckham had 4.43. The vertical, Toney had 39.5 and Beckham 38.5. So he can jump higher, he can run faster. The broad jump, he can even jump further, 11 feet 4 inches, and then 10 feet 2 inches for Beckham. And on the shuttle, 4.23 for Toney, 3.94 for Beckham. So I think Beckham's a little bit more on those little. That's kind of what he was always good at, those slants, just kind of like those really quick movements and agile shift of direction. The 3-cone, 6.88, 6.69. For Toney, and then Beckham, and the bench press, Toney's a little bit stronger with 9 bench press reps, and Beckham at 7. So altogether, Toney actually is a superior athlete after looking at the measurements. Again, that's just some of the stuff that translates to the NFL field, but a lot of it is more fundamental based. A lot of it's just so much intangible things that you just maybe can't teach. Beckham was just not only a superior athlete compared to most people, but also a superior football player. There's a difference there. So I think Toney does have the athletic attributes to be an absolute menace on the field. Like Anthony said, he could take it to the house at any given moment. Dave Gettleman will call him a touchdown maker. He's like if you mashed Sterling Shepard and John Ross together. That's kind of how I see him. Like if you just freaking put those two guys together, he has pretty good hands, pretty decent route running, but he's also fast as hell, and he can outrun secondaries. He can take a quick slant and then just boom right up the middle to the house. He can do those type of things. But also, if you watch the highlight video we put together, the guy does not go down on first contact. He pretty much always breaks the first tackle, and if he does get wrapped up, there are occasions where he does not go down. He has very good balance. He uses his hands to keep himself up. He uses his balance he recovers very nicely. Very good sense of direction and balance and spatial awareness. So overall, Kadarius Toney, it's not just him. It's the draft capital too. A-plus move for them in that first round there. They walked away looking pretty good. The second round, however.
Yeah.
Unless you have something else. Yeah, go ahead.
Yep. With Kadarius Toney, I want to say he actually reminds me a lot of Curtis Samuel. I think he'll play a really similar role to what Curtis Samuel played in Carolina for the Giants in New York. In terms of lining up in the backfield, outside, inside, just being used on jet sweeps, screens, a lot of Curtis Samuel elements to Kadarius Toney's game. And I do want to toot my own horn just a little bit because live on the live stream when we were reacting, I made that Odell Beckham Jr. comparison instantly, and I've heard it a lot since then. I do think that there's a lot to like with that comparison because I don't think Curtis Samuel has the elite hands that Odell had coming out, but Odell is an elite route runner in the NFL, but he really wasn't coming out of college. He was just really good. And Kadarius Toney's really good, so maybe he can turn into an elite route runner and really develop and turn into a phenomenal receiver for the Giants. Like I said, they swung for the fences. I love it. A-plus, value in the first round with all the trades that they made or things that they got from the trade. And I love the pick. And Kadarius Toney is actually one of my favorite players in this draft class. He's so fun to watch, and he's going to be a lot of fun to watch at the next level for the Giants.
That is 100% true. And I'll tell you what, the second round pick might even be better. We're talking Aziz Ojolari, guys. You know this. He's a player that just a week and a half ago was being mocked to the Giants at 11. At 11. We got him at 50. And we traded back to get another third-round pick next year. Talk about masterful drafting. Dave Gettleman and Joe Judge and Chris Pettit and all those guys who were in that war room making these calls and on these calls making these negotiations absolutely knocked it out of the park. On this specific one, I think in the first round too, but this one, it might even be better. We're talking about Aziz Ojolari, who is coming as a refined pass rusher out of Georgia. So he's played against some of the best talent in college football. The knee injury, yes, a little worrisome, which is why he dropped. The knee injury, he had a torn ACL a couple years ago, but that was basically it. Some people say he has a degenerate knee or something like that. Not degenerate knee, but degenerating knee, a degenerate knee. And if that is true, maybe he falls apart in a couple of years, but we get a couple good seasons out of him. But if it's not true, you have a guy who has double-digit sack potential, and when you watch him play, he causes turnovers, man. The guy's a turnover machine. When he sacks quarterbacks, he's not racking them up by the waist. He's not wrapping them up by the legs. He's jumping on their freaking back like a monkey and hitting the ball out. He's an aggressive, fast, and strong player. I think he was a steal at 50. You got the third round pick in addition to that after trading back, so you still got your guy. And he has one very great pass rush move. He's not coming out with, a couple of good pass rush moves that are underdeveloped. He's coming out with a couple of good ones and one great one. And that's what you want to see. I do like that about him, that he already has mastered one pass rush move that he can use effectively. And now people have asked me, Lorenzo Carter had more production than him. What's the difference between those two guys? They come from the same school, this and that. Aziz Ojolari has great speed off the edge. He's great off the line of scrimmage. He's pretty strong hands. He's got some more built-up pass rush moves. But he's also pretty versatile. You can do a couple things with him. He has, as a 3-4 outside linebacker. Lorenzo Carter, I think they kind of had to mold a little bit more. And Aziz has good bend around the edge. I know, Anthony, you love him. Tell us about Aziz Ojolari and what you think about this pick.
Yeah, before I heard about this, speculation around the knee injury, and just to clarify, he tore his ACL in high school. That's quite a while ago. He went through college and he was just fine and never had a knee problem. He even said that he didn't know the knee was even going to be a problem for NFL teams. He had no idea about that. I think he was expecting to go in the first round, and then I think a random team must have just put out there, oh, he's got this knee problem, and it plummeted his draft stock. Super screwed up, but is what it is. Giants reap the benefits of that. Just to think that the Giants traded down from 42 to 50 and still landed Aziz Ojolari is incredible. Plus, they got an additional 2022 third-round pick out of it, and we just talked about how valuable those 2022 picks are. Incredible value there. A-plus move by the Giants, an A-plus pick, because this is a guy who absolutely was a first-round talent. Aziz Ojolari was a first-round talent. I would have been okay with him at 11. Before I heard about the knee injuries and all that stuff, I would have been okay with him at 11 because I thought he was really talented, and I thought that he was really a top 15 to 25 talent, and if the Giants took him at 11, I didn't view it as a massive reach. Would have preferred, a trade down to around 20, and then you draft him there. Instead, we trade down to 20, get Kadarius Toney, and then get him at 50. I mean, how mind-blowing is that? A month ago, or like 3 weeks ago, we would have said, no way you're trading down to the second round and getting Aziz. You got to go back to around 18 or 19 if you want to secure him. You got him at pick 50, guys. That's insane value. He's a really talented player. He's got great pass rush moves. That one that's really, really good. He needs to work on that, add more of an array of pass rush moves, but he's actually surprisingly good in the running game, and he's got some juice, some speed, and some bend off the edge. That's his best trait. Daniel Jeremiah said he's not the bendiest guy. I don't know what Daniel Jeremiah is watching. I did a film breakdown last week. Go on the YouTube channel. Go check it out. It's really good, and you will enjoy it, and you'll get more familiar with Aziz Ojolari. I kind of called this. He was kind of one of my guys. I really thought he was a good fit for the Giants, and I really wanted to see him in Big Blue. So I made that film breakdown. I talked about it. I broke down his film, his strengths and weaknesses. Then he ends up in blue, and I can't be more happy about that. I was just talking about this last week, how great of a fit he would be, and now he's here, and we get to see this great fit in action with the Giants. I'm over the moon about this. This was my favorite pick of the draft. Just considering that they traded down, extrapolated as much value as they could have out of the second round, and landed a first-round talent. Like, this was legitimately a top 20 talent in the draft, fell to 50 right into their laps, and they snagged him. And it fills a major position of need. I love it. I love what the Giants did this year, and I love Aziz Ojolari as a player. Seriously, if you haven't watched the film breakdown, go watch it so you know exactly what we're getting in this guy. He's really good, he's really talented, and I think you're all going to walk away from that video saying, oh my God, how did the Giants steal this kid in the second round?
Yeah, that's kind of the consensus, I believe, from most people. It's like, how did they steal this guy in the second round, especially at 50 when people were mocking him at 11? And there was even analysts saying he was probably going to land in the 25 to 40 range. 50 would have never even been a consideration. That's just absurd. And the Giants walked away with incredible value because of it. A third-round pick and Aziz Ojolari, they got at 42. So keep that in mind. They got Aziz Ojolari and a third-round pick at 42 because they traded back to 50 and they got the draft capital. So phenomenal moves there. Shout out to Dave, shout out to Joe, shout out to all those front office guys that were in that war room making it happen, because they finally modernized and changed that philosophical approach, and it worked out exactly how we needed it to. Now, heading over to the third round, I know you're getting a little anxious because, if you remember, we were all like, what about that offensive line, though? What about the right guard position that, I don't really trust Shane Lemieux or Zach Fulton in right now? What about the 31st ranked pass efficient blocking unit last year? What are we doing there? What players are on the board? Who are we missing out on? There was a couple guys on the board at the time, but as we saw, it was really like Deontay Brown and it was really Trey Smith, and those guys dropped to like the 6th round. So I guess they made a good decision. They leapfrogged Dallas and the Eagles, and if you saw the video, the Eagles were quite mad that the Giants jumped in front of them to get Aaron Robinson out of UCF, and he's a very, very great prospect, and I'll tell you why. Aaron Robinson is filling a need for us because, yes, we do have Darnay Holmes in the slot, and Aaron Robinson really is that nickel corner. He's a nice slot corner. We needed depth there, and we needed competition there. When Darnay Holmes went down last year, it was devastating. They had to put Xavier McKinney in the slot, and he's not a refined slot corner. He's a safety. So when he went there, it really hurt us. It really hurt us because he was trying to learn his own position, let alone now fill in at slot corner. It did not work out well for us. And having Aaron Robinson not only is going to bring the best out of Darnay Holmes because you have very, very competitive position battle going on there now, but he's also in a room with James Bradbury. He's also in the room with Adoree Jackson. He's going to have some fantastic aggressive mentors and that have opposite styles of play. Adoree Jackson is more of an aggressive man corner, and then you have James Bradbury who's more of a finesse corner. He's going to learn so many different things and tendencies and traits from these guys. And it's really going to allow the Giants to have some great, great depth pieces in the secondary, especially when you're going to be shifting towards a more man coverage heavy scheme. Because we know that's what Patrick Graham, kind of relied on in the past. Now he's taking that to the next level with the Giants. When you are relying on man coverage, you need good depth. Because if one of those guys goes down, you're in big, big trouble because you essentially have to revert back to your zone scheme that they did last year because with Isaac Yiadom at CB2, they had major issues. They could not blitz as many guys as they wanted to. The pass rush was not as effective. Even though they finished with 40 sacks, which ranked 12th in the NFL, now they can rely on man coverage. They can send more blitzers. They can use more safety blitzes. Those big three safeties, Xavier McKinney, Logan Ryan, and Jabril Peppers, we're going to be seeing them doing unbelievably creative things and blitzing a lot more with those man coverage corners who can lock it down. That's what I'm really excited about, Anthony. What is your take on Aaron Robinson? Super aggressive corner, really good ball skills. In terms of just being aggressive and working through the play, he had a really good rep against Kadarius Toney at the Senior Bowl, where he played through the ball and really disrupted some passes. I think altogether, aggressive man press cover corner in the slot. You can't ask for a better fit there, and they managed to skip the Eagles to get him too, which is even better.
Yeah, of course. I always love sticking it to the Eagles, especially after what they did to us on night one. They really stuck it to the Giants. We stuck it right back to them. Screw Philadelphia. You guys know how I feel about that. Aaron Robinson is a guy I didn't look into too much pre-draft because I thought the Giants were going to be comfortable with what they had in the slot with Darnay Holmes. So when I looked at corners, I really looked at the outside guys. I thought the Giants might try and add someone as depth behind Adoree Jackson, and maybe they still did with Aaron Robinson. Aaron Robinson is a man-to-man corner. The Giants pretty much made it very clear this offseason and in all of their press conferences that they did not play enough man coverage to their liking last year. They played a lot of zone, and they got really creative with things, and they want to get back to just playing press and man-to-man coverage, hard-nosed defensive football, and this is one step closer towards being able to do that. Aaron Robinson, hard, press, physical, man-to-man corner from the slot. Darnay Holmes, I still believe in him. I think he's a phenomenal talent. One of those guys is going to get the starting job. Iron sharpens iron. They're going to duke it out in training camp. They're going to duke it out in preseason. They're going to duke it out in the regular season to see who becomes a full-time starter in the slot. Maybe there won't even be a full-time starter in the slot. Maybe there will be a rotation in the slot. Having as many great defensive backs on this roster as possible is only a good thing. Okay, think back to when we played Cleveland last year and how Baker Mayfield was literally just throwing to wide open receivers all game. Our secondary was getting shredded because James Bradbury was out, Darnay Holmes was out, and I even think there was another corner that was out. I don't remember though, but secondary was depleted and the team just looked terrible. Our defense was phenomenal all year and our coverage was really, really good all year. Except that Browns game and any really game where we were missing a corner, things became a problem. We didn't have the depth that we needed. Now we do. We have really good depth. We've got Aaron Robinson, Adoree Jackson, James Bradbury, Julian Love, Darnay Holmes. Those are 5 competent starting level players. Okay, those are good football players who can fill in or start at the cornerback position, any alignment, slot or outside. Giants got a lot of versatility, and with Aaron Robinson, man, they got a really, really good player. He is a talented player. He was absolutely deserving to be a third-round pick. He was really a second-round pick. The Giants even said that they considered taking him in the second round, but the board broke a certain way. They went Aziz. He was still there in the third round. They said, okay, screw this. I'm not giving the division an opportunity to draft him. I'm moving up, and I'm getting him, and I'm so happy that they did. I think this is a great pick. I know people were getting really antsy because they wanted an interior offensive lineman in the third round, but the Giants got a really good football player here. He was definitely the best player on their board. He was a second-round talent, and they got a steal in the third round, and you really can't complain about this. It's going to be great for the defense as we can transition back into that press man-to-man scheme. This is a huge part of that. Now we got the depth and we got the talent. This defense is going to be unreal next year.
Yeah, and I want to just touch on the offensive line quickly because it's worth it. And now we're heading into, the 4th and then the 6th rounds. And, the offensive line crop was pretty much strung out at that point. There was not much left in terms of value and immediate plug-and-play talent. This offensive line that we have, a lot of people might say it's awful. And last year, it was awful. But let's break down a couple of reasons as to why they were awful and why we should have a little bit more optimism moving forward. And let's start at left tackle, Andrew Thomas. Obviously the guy allowed double-digit sacks. He had a pretty poor season. But look what he was up against. The factors right off the bat, no preseason, no training camp for the most part. It's all virtual. He had an ankle injury in training camp that he played through the entire year, which required surgery at the end of the season. His coach was fired mid-season, which means he had to change a lot of his technique. And, I even saw Paul Alexander, one of the best offensive line coaches out there. I think he does personal stuff now, but he used to be the Dallas and Cincinnati offensive line coach. He even said what he was showing on the field was not matching up with what the Giants drafted him to do. He was more of a power blocker. Now he was getting a little bit crazy. He was getting beat inside. Cardinals said he never got beat inside at Georgia. The guy was all over the place, whether it was ankle, whether it was Mark Colombo trying to get crazy. All these different factors played a part. So Andrew Thomas this year with a preseason, with a training camp, with a full bill of health, with a consistent coach in Rob Sale, a guy who Joe Judge personally picked for him. I feel good about it now. I feel good about Andrew Thomas making a big step forward this year. Left guard, Will Hernandez, some people might say, obviously a bad year last year. The guy's been through the ringer, man. He went from Ben McAdoo to Pat Shurmur to Jason Garrett. The guy's been through 3 offensive schemes. He's had no continuity. You know what I mean? No continuity. What are you supposed to do there? And when you talk about that, he also didn't have that preseason last year to get used to this new scheme and new faces around him. So he had the same factors to deal with that the rookies did because he was going in to learn a new scheme and didn't even get to do anything personal, didn't get the preseason to actually do it. It took them about half the year just to get into form, if you notice. Nick Gates never played center before. First time ever playing center. He ended up being fine. He's our long-term solution there. I personally believe that. Will Hernandez also lost a little bit of weight this year. I think he's going to become a little bit more agile so he can pull across the line of scrimmage. I think that's going to be a big benefit for them. Shane Lemieux, same thing with Andrew Thomas. All the factors, COVID, this, that. Will Hernandez got COVID, by the way, and that was a big factor, too, that we shouldn't leave out. COVID, if you had it, seriously fatigues you. If you even got the vaccine, you felt fatigued. So imagine actually getting it and then having to play in a professional football game against guys who are healthy. Will Hernandez... the guy's tough as hell. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt, going into this second year under Jason Garrett. Shane Lemieux, same thing, minus the COVID, just kind of didn't play well because of, the preseason and everything, not having all that time. I think he'll take a step forward too. Matt Parrott, he got COVID, same thing, rookie stuff. Nate Solder opted out because of COVID. They didn't have the depth there. The Giants' offensive line faced a lot of problems last year. So I think that's the way that the coaching staff and the executives are looking at it and saying they didn't get a fair shot at really being the best unit they can be. They showed some progress, they showed some positivity toward the end of the year, but they didn't show everything they can be. And I think now we can kind of see the light at the end of the tunnel. They will have a full offseason. They'll be able to make some positive steps forward. That's how I feel about the offensive line.
Yeah, when you talk about the offensive line, you got to keep in mind the COVID factors that you just mentioned, the factors of the offensive line coach change mid-season. That's tough to deal with. Learning new schemes. It's a really young group. And then there was a lot of hidden injuries on the offensive line. Matt Parrott played hurt for almost the entire year, apparently. He had some sort of ankle injury that was bothering him the second half of the season. Apparently, he was supposed to start those games that we all wanted to see him start, but he was hurt, so they didn't want to put him out there and put any strain on his leg. They would rather just have him get some reps, but also heal and look forward to next season. Matt Peart should be the starter this year. I am a huge fan of Matt Peart, as many of you know. He was my guy last year. He was like my number one guy that I wanted the Giants to take in the third round, and they did it, and I was ecstatic. I was over the moon about it, and I still kind of am, because I do think this kid is a steal in the third round, and he is a starter in the NFL, and he will be a starter for the Giants this year. I fully believe that. And then Andrew Thomas as well played injured for the majority of the season, had ankle surgery at the end of the year. So you talk about the issues that we had on the offense line, the tackles not playing up to par. Both of our starting tackles were injured. You know, Matt Peart wasn't necessarily the starter. Cam Fleming was. Cam Fleming was just a stopgap disaster, really. Honestly, no. Credit to Cam Fleming. He was a stopgap. He was an average tackle, and that's what we needed at the time. Now we've got Matt Peart, who I think can be a lot more than an average tackle. Andrew Thomas will be a lot more than an average tackle. He's going to fix his form, his technique. A lot of what happened with his technique, the problems that he was having last year, were related to his feet. Clearly, his ankle injury was bothering him, and that forced him to change his technique. So, if that's the case, you have to assume now that he's got that surgery, now that he's healed up, he'll fix his feet, he'll fix his technique, and he'll be a better player. So, yeah, we didn't address the offensive line in this draft. Still, keep an eye out to see if the Giants pick up any veterans in free agency or on the waiver wire as we inch closer to the season. Maybe not even until like August or, July, once there's training camp cuts or preseason cuts. Might have to wait till then to get some more reinforcements on the offensive line, but keep in mind that more reinforcements could be coming soon, and even if not, I think the Giants are really comfortable with what they have, and I hope they're right, and I hope we're wrong, because I don't feel good about the guard situation, but I do feel good about the tackle situation. I do feel good about the center, so if I feel good about 3 out of the 5 positions on the offensive line, that's probably more than most teams' fans can say about their offensive lines, because offensive line play is a problem around the league, and the Giants' offensive line has been a problem for a really long time, but they really tried to fix it last year. They did spend 3 draft picks on the offensive line, so let's see how these guys pan out this year, and if it doesn't pan out well, we try to sign someone mid-season, or we just look ahead to next year and say, we got 2 first-round picks, we'll find our guy then, right? So offensive line, I think the future's pretty bright for it. So don't get too caught up on the fact that the Giants didn't draft a lineman in this year's draft.
Yeah, that's kind of, I'm on the same train of thought as you. But let's jump over to the 4th round. Interesting picks all around. It's kind of, it's hard to break down some of the players because they were so random. You know what I mean? Like some of these players just were so random, and they didn't. I have no idea that they were going to pick them. Some of them like the Senior Bowl standouts like Allison Griffin. It's tough, but 4th round, you get Allison Griffin. That's the linebacker. He was 4th round pick, right?
Smith.
Six.
Allison Smith was our 4th round pick.
4th round pick. Yes, he was. Okay. So another guy who stood out at the Senior Bowl. Interesting player. He's very long, lanky. Could stand to gain a little bit of weight. Kind of chicken legs, but the guy's fast, man. If you watch him, he is so fast, and I think that's kind of what the Giants are looking for. Dave Gettleman said, speed kills at the NFL level, and having a speedy pass rusher is a benefit because I think they want to add a bit more speed off the edge. They kind of have slower guys right now, like before Aziz. Lorenzo Carter and Ocean Exhibitors weren't the fastest off the line of scrimmage, but I know Allison Griffin. The guy has a ton of upside. But he's not well known. He's kind of like an Ocean Exhibitors guy. He's from northern Iowa, and nobody really knows who he is. But the athletic traits are there. The athletic upside is there. He has some very good qualities. Seems like a good guy. And I think this is more of like a best player available. The Giants really went with a BPA approach this entire draft, value/BPA approach. And I think that worked out well for them. They were not going to force any picks. Are we really depending on a 4 to 6 round offensive lineman to solve our problems at right guard? Probably not. That's probably not where we want to go with that. By the end of the day, adding a bit of depth, probably wouldn't have been a bad idea. But, when it comes to Allison Smith, decent player. He's more of a situational guy to start. I think he is going to be more of like a sub-package guy that kind of comes in and helps in specific scenarios. They'll put him in. He'll be maybe a special teams guy to start his career, work his way in, battle with Cam Brown. Those 4 to 6, 7 round picks, those are Joe Judge's bread and butter. He's like, those guys can work their way up to the practice squad. And I love that about what he looks for in players. He wants immediate value. He doesn't want Allison Smith to sit on the bench and basically offer no value in day one. They obviously see some sort of application on special teams for him. So I like that. We'll see how that goes, Anthony. But what do you think about Allison Smith? I wish it was Everson Griffin. I keep saying his name.
Allison Smith, right? So 4th-round pick. This is a guy who's 6'7". He's like 252 pounds at 6'7", but he just added that weight. So what I found in my research that when you watch his 2019 tape, he does look really skinny. Like, that dude is really thin, and it's like kind of concerning. He added like 60 pounds since then. He's like put on a lot of muscle mass, and he's a true athlete. So this is a guy that you're saying like was not a highly sought after prospect last year, right? Because he opted out this year. He didn't play in 2020. But you look at him last year, and you're like, okay, he doesn't look like he's an NFL player. Then you see him at his pro day for Northern Iowa, and you're like, oh my God, he gained 60 pounds. He's 6'7", and he ran a 4.78 40-yard dash, had a 41.5-inch vertical jump. Like, the dude's a basketball player. 6'7", 250 pounds, and he has a 41-inch vertical. He's an NBA player, low-key, right? But he had a 9.72 relative athletic score. You love to see that. He is a true athlete. Absolutely is. And I think that, this is a player that has a lot of upside. I think in the middle rounds, these are the kind of guys that you want to take a chance on. He has a really quick first step. His 10-yard split was 1.6 seconds, which is in the 9.42 on the relative athletic score, meaning it's in the 94th percentile. Like, that's really impressive. Even though his 40-yard dash wasn't the best, the 10-yard split is actually the best trait that you want to look at for defensive ends and edge rushers, because 10 yards to the quarterback, go. How fast can you get there? He can get there in 1.6 seconds, which is really impressive. He's a quick guy, has a lot of bursts off the line of scrimmage, and that's kind of what you want to see from these developmental guys that you take in the middle rounds. You just want to see really good athletes that you can hopefully mold into a good pass rusher, right? Because he's got all the clay that you need, with that athleticism, that size, that speed. He's got all the clay. Now it's up to the coaching staff and the consistency of the clay to mold together into a good pass rusher. So that's what the Giants' plan are with him. I think instantly, though, he makes an impact on special teams, whether he's just trying to block kicks, with his huge wingspan and his big height, doing all that stuff. That might be where he fits in day one, but I think you develop him, and I said mold him like he's a piece of clay, and you try and make him a developmental rotational pass rusher later in his career. But right off the bat, I think, he's a solid depth piece with a lot of upside and potential and a very good day one special teamer.
Yeah, you heard it here first. Allison Smith is a piece of clay. A moldable piece of clay with good consistency, right? Whatever kind of clay you're thinking, it might be East River clay. That stuff is disgusting. Hopefully not that type of clay. You ever see when you were a kid, though, you play with, what were those like little fuzzy, little like wire things? You can make like little, what those things were called?
I know what you're talking about. Tube cleaners, I think.
Tube
something
cleaners,
like that.
Tube cleaners. Like little tube iron cleaner, whatever. Like those things, you can make cool things out of him and bend him around. I don't know why. That's why I thought. I guess he kind of has the legs of one of those. A very skinny legged guy. But again, you said like 70 pounds he added. That's crazy. Like, how do you even add 70 pounds to a frame? The guy must have looked like a freaking stick bug. Just like one of those things on a tree. Like, unbelievable. But let's head over to the 6th round where we have some more players. And I'm working on getting Darius Williams, by the way, Greedy Williams' brother. I talked to him, and he might want to come on the channel. So that'll be really fun. Do a little interview with Darius. Get to know him about that. So just a little shout out to that. If you heard it here first, maybe we'll get that soon. But when it comes to the 6th round, another interesting group of players, Gary Breitwell out of Arizona. Not the most productive guy in college, but, you think about Ahmad Bradshaw, guys like that. He has value. He does have value. He has a nice little downhill burst. He didn't grade relatively well athletically. But at the same time, he has some experience with some of the Giants coaching staff. I think that was a big part of it. Just a great guy, a great locker room presence, and he's willing to do whatever needs to be done. Another application to the special teams if they need it. I like this guy, Brightwell guy. Sometimes the production's like a Jason Oweh type of thing, although he ranked really, really well athletically. Like, the production sometimes doesn't always tell you what type of player you're getting. Brightwell does have some nice burst downfield. He does make some guys miss. He's a little shifty, like kind of small lateral moves, can make some guys miss. Decent pass catcher. He kind of reminds me of a Deion Lewis supplement. Deion Lewis, like kind of a James White knockoff. Like, one of those type of guys who has some application on special teams, application as a pass catching back, a pass blocking back, a guy who they can just kind of refine and build behind Saquon and Devontae Booker. I'm not upset with this pick at all. I thought that I was pretty confident the Giants were going to take a running back at some point. I had them taking Puka out of Kansas, but they didn't end up taking my guy Puka. But they got Gary, so I'm happy about it. We'll see how he does. I'm confident that they know what they're doing with these guys. So, what do you think about Gary Breitwell, Anthony?
I mean, this is like one of the less exciting picks in this draft for me. I'm really, not a big running back guy. Didn't really think the Giants needed to get another running back on their roster. I liked what they had already. Didn't think that they needed to get this guy. But Gary Breitwell, solid player, decent prospect, and kind of a violent runner, an angry guy. He loves to run into contact, but he's also got surprisingly good agility, surprisingly good speed. I think this is a guy that can be a pretty solid running back 2 on a roster, and I think that's probably what the Giants were looking for in this. Obviously, they're not looking for RB1 with this. We've got that in Saquon. But when you talk about a backup running back, let's not pretend, of course I have my criticism about the running back position and the valuation of it and the allocation of resources into it. But I think we all remember when we were down to like our 3rd or 4th string running back against New England in 2019, right? Jonathan Hilleman, shout out to him, great guy. Love that dude. He came onto the draft live stream last year. Cool guy, but he really struggled as a starting running back. He's more of a guy that you just want to work in there and have play on special teams. But when he had to start for the Giants against the Patriots, it was a struggle. Our running game could not get things going. He fumbled in that game. It was just tough for him. He was asked to do too much, and it was pretty unfair that he was asked to do all of that because the Giants could have just signed someone and really alleviated a lot of that pressure from Jonathan. But it is what it is. Now the Giants have another guy, Gary Breitwell, who's on the roster. He can be that guy. If something happens, if Saquon gets hurt again, or, if someone else gets hurt behind him, well, Gary Breitwell, you step up and you play and you get some solid play out of him because he is a good football player, So I think the Giants just add some depth there, add some depth on offense in general, right? And just keep adding talented offensive weapons to put into this roster and onto this team with Daniel Jones. Give him as much depth as possible so that, if Daniel Jones has to deal with backups, he has good backups to deal with, right? Because remember when Eli Manning had to deal with backups and we were like signing guys off of the street, literally? And we were like, these are bad backups. Like, these aren't even good backups. Like, the backups are supposed to be bad, but these are bad backups. These should be backups. But that's what the Giants were playing with. Now that's not going to be the case. We have good backups. John Ross is a good backup. Dante Pettis is a good backup. Gary Breitwell, good backup. Happy with this. Happy with everything that the Giants did offensively this year. And really happy with this draft class.
Yeah, and let's touch on Darius Williams for a second. I think another application to special teams. He is a very good straight line runner, and he's physical, and he can contest 50-50 balls. Another press man type of coverage corner. Again, you can't have too many defensive backs when you're running a man scheme. That's kind of the reality of it. And the Giants do have Isaac Yiadom. They do have Julian Love, who is not going anywhere. But Sam Beal's the odd man out, in my opinion, at this point. He's going to be making a little bit too much money, in my opinion, for having missed the last couple of years. And that was kind of a throwaway 3rd-round pick for Gettleman. So I think he made up for it with the trade back for Aziz Ojolari and getting that 3rd round next year. But at the end of the day, Sam Beal might be that odd man out. Darius Williams, pretty decent player out of Oklahoma State. Good size. He's aggressive. He made some plays. But he's rangy. I like his straightaway speed as a gunner on the punt unit. That's kind of what I see him, how I see him making an impact day one. That's where I think he'll really be applicable to start his career with the Giants. But I do like him a lot. I think you can't have enough cornerbacks. The Giants obviously went full DB this draft and really made sure to secure a couple of solid options that they can develop behind the scenes and maybe even make an impact early on, like Aaron Robinson. So we're excited to see what they do with those guys. But what do you think about Darius Williams before we clock out here?
Yeah, I like this pick. I think this is another testament to the Giants getting back to their man-to-man press coverage scheme. Darius Williams is a man-to-man press coverage corner, and I think now he adds a little bit more depth for the Giants as they try to do that more in their scheme. So I like that pick. Solid pick. Developmental guy. Has good size, good length. Isn't a top-tier prospect, but doesn't need to be. Depth piece. Special teams player. The Giants really value their special teams. Joe Judge has a strong special teams background, and I trust in Joe Judge, and we all should, especially after these past 2 drafts and the way that he's changed the culture here. And I just think that this is another good depth piece. I think it really does signify that the Giants are going for this press man-to-man scheme, and I think I'm excited by it. I like this pick, and hopefully we get to talk to for Darius Williams. I know that's something that's in the cards for us, so that'd be really cool. Stay tuned to that if you guys are still listening to this, because we've got a lot of great stuff coming up soon, some interviews and everything, so keep an eye out for content. And yeah, I like this pick. I give it a good grade, and I really just like this Giants draft class in general, the haul that they got. You take in all the players, and you take in all the draft picks that they got. This is an A-plus draft to me. Really happy, real nice breath of fresh air what the Giants have done the past couple of years compared to the couple of years prior. Breath of fresh air, really hopeful for the future, really loving what the Giants are doing right now.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll try and get some UDFAs on here too if we can reach out to them and get them on here, get to learn a little bit more about them, because you never know who's going to make an impact. Like Nico Lalos last year, guy came in and had a couple fumble recoveries, forced a couple fumbles. That was a big deal for the Giants, especially in that Cincinnati game. I think he recovered one, and he intercepted a ball too. So these guys, you never know when they're going to make an impact. Nick Gates, another UDFA guy. Now he's our starting center. You never know who's going to be a home run find. You really just don't. So I'm excited about that, Anthony. Excited to get some more exclusive content on here for you guys, original exclusive stuff. Always love to get that when we have the opportunity. So I hope you guys enjoyed 15-minute podcast, just breaking down, these draft selections. Didn't sleep much past couple days trying to get these live streams out and all the content that we were producing. So hopefully you enjoyed all of it. And, just our analysis of these players and what they're going to do for the Giants in the upcoming year. Really excited. Now I just can't wait for football. We're a couple months away, but I really wish we could just fast forward to September already. Even August. I'd take preseason football at this point. I just need it. But I'm excited, guys. Hope you enjoyed. Make sure to subscribe below on YouTube. Turn on the notifications for Apple and Spotify. Much love as always, and we'll catch you guys on the next video.